AfrikanExodus show. I'm your host, Tierney Cherie, here to you with a new video. Before we get started with today's African News segment, to remind you all, if you want to stay connected outside of YouTube, they have another means of communication. You have two ways to do that. The first way is the free way. You can join my Telegram channel. Telegram is an app that I update anytime I post a video, any thoughts I want to share. That is a way to have community outside of YouTube. In addition, you could also support this channel by joining my Patreon group. Patreon is the app that I use in order to post exclusive videos that would just be for you. And so that is another way you could support this channel. With that, let's get started with African and World News. So a very unpredicted scuffle happened in Chicago amongst a pro-Palestine rally between two factions you would not be expecting to be warring at this time. One being the people who were supporting Palestine, and the other being people who the media calls Black Hebrew Israelites, but the people who are of different camps, different beliefs, different identifications, but the central commonality that people who have this label have is that all of them are identifying African people in the United States, in the Western Hemisphere, and in various places throughout the continent of Africa, are the dispersed children of Yasharel. Now, I want to talk about this story, but first I want to talk about some of the commentary that was made generally about this scuffle that happened. So, obviously, there was a disturbance, there was a protest, and you had a number of Hebrew Israelite people coming out and basically protesting the Palestinian outcry amongst a barrage of war crimes being committed against the people of Palestine, amongst a community that is bleeding actively in the world stage, while we watch Zionist Israel throttle them without any consequence. So this is something that's happening in real time, something that all of us can observe. And even if you're not Palestinian, even if you're not Muslim, although not all Palestinians are Muslim, but even if you don't have a close identification with the people there, if you are someone of African descent, you should be able to identify and have commonality with the idea that a people are completely committing genocidal acts against your own community, while the world community is just quiet, docile, and some are directly cheering this on. So this is something we've all dealt with. This is something we've suffered from, being the people who have been primarily sought after, primarily suffered under colonialism. Now that is happening, and instead of our people seeing what it is, some people decided to come out and voice discontent with the idea of people who are supporting Palestine. And I want to first talk about some of the messaging that came out from the pro-Palestine side, because I've seen a number of people who are on Twitter, who are activists, who are Black, supporting Palestinians, trying to discredit Hebrew Israelites by saying, well, you know, Hebrew Israelites, they've had a checkered past as far as infiltration, which is true, and we'll talk about that. And therefore, you know, you should know this group has been co-opted many times in history. Someone pointed out that Hebrew Israelites, there was a Hebrew Israelite brother who is the assassinator, if that's the word, the person who assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mother. Someone pointed that out. So instead of having a nuanced conversation, some people who would be so abhorred if this was done to them. So for example, let's say there was someone who took out an example of an FBI informant who was an activist in the Black Panther Party or an activist inside of the Black Power movement. And there were many FBI informants inside of the Black Power movement. And that's how that movement was able to be put down. Let's say someone took that and made that the face of the movement and said, yeah, you know, the Black Power movement, it was co-opted by these people. So just putting that out there, the movement was crap. It didn't do nothing for the community. Well, that's not a fair depiction. Similarly, to use a broad brush to paint all people who have identified African descendants in the Western Hemisphere and throughout the continent of Africa as being the children of Yasharel, to say that, oh, these people have a history of co-optation, a history of working with the state, working with the FBI, is just as unfair as that example that I just gave you. Now, that being said, let's be very clear. The way that the government has always operated whenever it sees a perceived threat. And I absolutely am of the opinion that African people identifying that they are the children of Yasharel, that they are the Hebrews in the Bible, is a threat to the state. Because number one, it's a threat to Zionism. Number two, scripturally, prophetically, it's a threat whenever those same people wake up and realize who they are. That moves things in the earth, that moves things in the atmosphere to where there's going to be a number of shifts that's happening. There's going to be a number of things that people have oppressed us have to be brought to task for by the Almighty. And so that is something that they do not want to see happen. They do not want to see more people, even in the celebrity world, whether it's Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. Of course, these people are a part of the Babylon system and that they work and operate through it. So they're not going to be outwardly vocal as they should be, but they'll be tamed in their analysis. But even that level, the celebrity people who just casually say these things, they don't want any identification of that, again, for spiritual reasons, but also, again, this completely goes against Zionism. And I believe there's so much evidence of the fact that we are the children of Yasharel, that when it comes and is correctly put on a table for everyone to see and everyone to have an unbiased conversation about and everyone to discuss, that the Zionists are going to, I believe, really conspire hardcore to take down a lot of people who are the voices of the movement. So understand that in every instance, when the state has identified a group and ideology as being against their interests, the way that the United States does things is by creating pseudo movements or creating groups inside of those movements whose purpose is to distract from the purpose. This happened in the quote-unquote Black Lives Matter movement. Even though the name Black Lives Matter was attached to people like Patrice Colliers, and I forget the other one's name, the movement was already in existence before they ever said Black Lives Matter. If you were paying attention from Trayvon Martin, that's really where you see a wide identification that African people and police brutality is something that needs to be addressed, not just in America, but on a global stage. And it just became more and more amplified. And by the time Mike Brown was murdered, there had already been a movement that had been built up. These women, 3 women, put the label Black Lives Matter on it. And then from there, they get to be the poster children for something that was already happening in the streets of America, was already happening amongst the people, already happening on social media. So because these women were selected to be the face of the movement and to have the hashtag that gets to be the word or the name associated with the movement, and they were given millions of dollars in order to do that, these women were allowed to co-opt the message, to water it down, to make it an all lives matter thing. If you think about the way that they tried to include all these issues that have nothing to do with the issue of police brutality, these women were used to undermine the Black family. These women were used in many capacities. And that's how the U.S. government, and ultimately, let's not forget, these same women were used by completely swindling the people, completely taking advantage of the people, completely doing things with the money that are unethical, and really calling to question, hey, what were we sending money for as far as the people who were giving money to those organizations? So not just that, they give the power structure, the authority or the standing to say, hey, we tried to help you Black people. We tried to end police brutality, but these Black Lives Matter people, they just took advantage of us, and we're not going to help you anymore. We're not going to talk about police brutality anymore. In fact, take it off the table. We don't want to talk about it on the political stage. So when you understand that this is how the governing structure operates, when it wants to take down movements, we have to be sensitive when it's happening in any type of movement, even if you are an African person in the diaspora or in the continent who does not believe you are the children of Yasharel, you should be able to identify when pseudo groups are put inside of a movement in order to co-opt the movement. And I say that to say, I've been recognized that this is being done inside of the people who are Hebrew Israelites, people who have that spiritual identification as being the children of Yasharel. I've been noticing groups who are closely aligned as far as their history with policing, who are doing actions that really call into question, is this for the good of the movement or is this to undermine the movement? Especially inside of this atmosphere of Black identity extremists. Black identity extremists is being attached to a number of people, and Hebrew Israelites are one of those people. So because there's certain factions that, again, are created. And we're going to talk, by the way, in this broadcast about other ways that the government does this. They create these groups, they create these narratives in order to get the result they want. Because these groups have been operating in a way that completely deters from the message, that completely calls into question their ethics, and completely derails any unifying call for African people around the world and other oppressed people, and other people who identify with the Bible. Because these groups have been able to undermine that message, the government gets to wipe their hands clean and say, hey guys, these Hebrew Israelites are not the people who you want to follow. And that's what's happening right here. So I say all that long introduction to say, yes, there are some Hebrew Israelite groups that are absolutely infiltrated with feds. I said it, it's true. But understand, when someone says that they are Hebrew Israelite, and I don't even necessarily call myself that, to be honest, because I know what I'm saying. I know that I'm a child of Yashara. I know that. But to me, putting labels on things, people can't necessarily process labels. But when someone says that, the general theme that is being conveyed to you is that I am a child of Yashara. It doesn't mean that person's a Christian. There are Hebrew Israelites that are non-Messianic. It doesn't mean that there's Hebrew Israelites. We're going to talk about Farakhan. If you think about some of his statements, he would be called a Hebrew Israelite because he says that African people in the Western Hemisphere are the descendants of Israel. So there are people who are Muslim who would be Hebrew Israelite. There are people who are just straight Torah who are Hebrew Israelite. That's not a unifying belief. It's not a political identification. People like me, I'm not affiliated with any group. Okay, this is literally me studying my word and praying and seeking the Most High. That's for me. So we have to be very clear. Those of us who believe in the idea of African liberation, we have to be clear not to fall for the bait when it comes to putting these wide brushes over our people whenever we see clear activity that goes against the general the interest of a liberated people. We have to be clear that there are always going to be groups and sects and individuals who are completely co-opted, who are being used for counterintelligence. That's just always been the case, and it's always going to be the case. But at the same time, we have to be very clear on who we are, and we have to be very clear that we're not going to participate inside of that. Although you can absolutely condemn the conduct, you should not condemn a broad group as far as being something that they're not. So with that, let's go into what actually happened with the story. So pro-Hamas protesters beat Black Hebrew Israelites with Palestinian flags in Chicago. The Israel-Hamas war has come to America. This is what the article says. Black Hebrew Israelites and pro-Hamas Palestinians duked it out in the streets of Chicago this weekend. Video captured by Yeshiva World News showed pro-Hamas protesters using their Palestinian flagpoles as weapons as both sides fought in the road Sunday. So there's some social media posts. One says Black Hebrew Israelites / Hebrews fight pro-Hamas protesters in Chicago. FYI, BHI believe that they are the real Jews, and Jews like me are fake Khazarians. Did not have this on my 2023 bingo card. So the article goes on to say the wooden pole snapped because someone's seriously beating someone with a pole. It snapped in the process. Both sides lobbed bottles and sticks at each other while Chicago police struggled to keep them apart. This was the story on Saturday as well when police failed to do so, resulting in tense times along Michigan Avenue. The Black Israelites appeared to be outnumbered, but that didn't deter them from wanting to get a piece of the Palestinians. Well, all hell broke loose between some of the Palestinian protesters and the Black Israelites. Police and organizers did their best to calm things down to varying degrees of success. So here's the problem with this showing by the Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters. And from what I saw, there's first a video, you saw them standing on the side, agitating essentially. They see these Palestinians raising their flags, and they're up there shouting at them. Who knows what they said? As they said, there was a lot of tension brewing. And then the next video I saw, you just seen them all out fighting. The assumption is that they were out there basically because as they see the land of Palestine as being the Holy Land, which it's not, but they believe Palestine is the Holy Land because Palestine is the Holy Land and it's occupied by Israel. Although we might be against Israel, we're also against anyone else who's trying to lay claim to the Holy Land. So therefore, as for you Palestinian protesters who are, yes, going through a genocidal campaign by Zionist Israel as we speak, we're going to come at you for trying to lay claim to our Holy Land. That's seriously, the logic is crazy, first of all. Now, we'll deal with Palestine as a separate issue, but let's just deal with the idea that instead of targeting your energy towards the one who's powerful in a situation, the state of Israel is the one who wields power. Your tax dollars, people in Chicago, are going to the bombs that are being used to bomb children, bomb hospitals, bomb churches. Your tax dollars are going to that. And you see a protest happening. Instead of use that energy, and I'm very sure there are pro-Israel protests happening, instead of using that energy to maybe go to the people who are committing genocide, you want to go to the people who are protesting against it. You don't have to have the same ideology, the same religious beliefs as these people to see that wrong is wrong, no matter who's doing it. If Israel's doing wrong right now by these people who are have been living on a land that many of you will never go to, then you should be able to, at the very least, if you're not going to stand up with them, at the very least, you should be able to keep quiet. Now, as I said, Palestine is not biblical Yasharel. We've said this on this channel. We'll keep saying this on this channel. We'll keep talking about it because we have to get that in our heads. If you are fighting for Palestine, that is their land. The Palestinians, even whenever they did DNA tests comparing Palestinians to the Israeli occupiers, they were the closest blood related to the people who were originally inhabited that land. Those people were not the kingdom of Israel. And I know it's hard for us to understand. And as far as right now, what proof I will give you, I have other videos talking about this. You can look through the playlist of, I believe, that was Hidden Revelations. There's a few videos I did on this. But if you really want to know where to go to your Bible. That's what I'll say for now. Obviously, we'll go back to this subject because it has to be talked about more. But go to your Bible and read about what Israel was. Read about the boundaries. It says something called the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. And clearly it can't be the Euphrates because Euphrates is a Greek word. The real word is Pereth. So where's the Pereth River? That has to be your search. And if you do a due diligent search, you will end up in East Africa, not inside of Palestine, not inside of Arabia, inside of East Africa. So the whole thing was nonsense. Unfortunately, some of our people are co-opted. Some of our people might not be co-opted. They might just have a misunderstanding because they have been misadvised by people who are not pointing them to the truth. Most importantly, we should understand that the regathering that is prophesied inside of Scripture, where Yasharel is brought back to the Holy Land, is not going to be done because we shout out or have a shout out match against a people. It's going to be a work of the Most High, one that He does and ushers us back into our rightful place. And so if we have that understanding, we can have peace inside of a situation where there's havoc, and certainly not speak out in support of genocide when it's happening in real time for all of us to see. So with that, let's get started with the next story. So the United States government has not forgotten about Uganda, and you will see that they have added them to a list of 3 other countries that recently had coups in Africa as being no longer a part of a trade deal that would have been highly beneficial to the country of Uganda. So the U.S. is to remove Uganda and 3 other African countries from AGOA trade deal. The countries were either involved in gross violations of human rights or not making progress towards democratic rule, the president said. The U.S. introduced the African Growth and Opportunity Act in 2000. It gives eligible sub-Saharan African countries duty-free access to the United States for more than 1,800 products. Let's just stop that right there because I want to just emphasize this. This deal would give access to the United States for 1,800 products. It's really in the benefit of the United States. Don't get it twisted. Now, as far as people who want imports, okay, they would benefit. But is this something of the benefit to most people on the street. No, this is something to a benefit of a certain class of people, and also it's a benefit to the United States government because they're getting to export products, and we know the products of the United States are not highly in demand like other countries like a China, right? So President Biden said that Niger and Gabon, both of which are currently under military rule following coups this year, are ineligible for AGOA because they have not established or are not making continual progress towards establishing the protection of political pluralism and the rule of law. He also said that the removal of CAR and Uganda from the program was due to gross violations of internationally recognized human rights by their governments. In May, the U.S. government said it was considering removing Uganda from AGOA and introducing sanctions on the country after it passed a controversial anti-homosexuality law. Now, if you're wondering why the CAR is on that list, the CAR is very close with Russia right now. So you have two countries that had coups, Niger and Gabon. Now, again, Uganda, what did they do? They passed this anti-homosexuality law. We know that's something that has been actively sought to be pushed inside of the African continent from back to Obama. And they've been threatened repeatedly for what the United States will do to them for this. Let's be very clear that as for today, sanctions have not reached the level of like a Zimbabwe, so Uganda has not felt the wrath of U.S. sanctions, so who knows whether or not they will go further, but they're basically signaling that they're going in that direction as far as their disagreements with Uganda, taking this action and passing this law, and they're going to try to punish them for it, okay, albeit though not as harsh as other countries like a Zimbabwe. Now it says their expulsion from AGOA is set to take effect from the start of next year. It's likely to impact their economies as AGOA has been credited with promoting exports, economic growth, and job creation among participating countries. The threat to exclude Niger and Gabon from AGOA is the latest U.S. government action against the two junta-led countries. The U.S. State Department announced last week that it suspended most foreign aid to Gabon and would only resume assistance if Gabon's transitional government establishes democratic rule. In August, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken announced a similar measure against Niger, saying that the U.S. is pausing certain foreign assistance programs benefiting the government of Niger. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea have all previously been expelled from AGOA after military coups in those countries. Now, understand the countries that have had coups recently, the U.S. essentially has to expel them from any type of outward aid. That's like a condition as far as being led by a military junta. The United States, at face value, is not allowed to conduct certain business with military juntas. That's not to say they've cut off all aid to these countries that have had coups. If you know, for example, the government of, I think it's Burkina Faso, have recently done a number of exercises with the United States government giving the go-ahead. Same thing with Niger. So a lot of people have been questioning, well, if you are cutting off aid to these countries, why aren't you cutting off aid to them completely militarily? And the answer is because the United States is still getting something from these countries. So as far as them being taken out of the deal, I look at this simply as trying to show the world that they are against a coup that they're not necessarily against. But again, Uganda is being punished for them taking the stance that they want this law. Because out of all the things that are happening in Africa, all the things that are wrong, all the things that are inflicting pain and suffering on an entire continent, the United States is most concerned with pushing certain rights, that being gay rights, inside of the African continent. So they will overlook the many other corruption issues happening. They'll overlook the many other persecutions that are happening, the genocidal campaigns. They'll overlook all of that and hyper-focus on Uganda because Uganda did something that they were not allowed to do, and they have to punish them for it. So with that, let's go to the next story. So last week we spoke about Minister Louis Farakhan suing the Anti-Defamation League. And now we're going to talk about some more of the reasons why he's doing so. So he did a video where he talked more about what exactly he was doing this for. And he also put out a statement. So it says, Louis Farakhan has dropped a whooping, again, $4.8 billion lawsuit against the Anti-Defamation League, or the ADL, for the alleged abuse, misuse, and false use of the term anti-Semitism to smear his name and vilify the Nation of Islam. The suit holds the ADL responsible for defamation and First Amendment rights interference, and Farakhan, who's 90 years old, I didn't know that, wants the organization to be permanently barred from using the term anti-Semitic, and anti-Semitism to hinder his exercise of free speech. The Anti-Defamation League is a global Jewish organization and anti-hate advocacy group specializing in civil rights law and combating anti-Semitism, bias, extremism, according to its website. While the ADL is a non-governmental group, Farakhan claims that it is un-American and that its activities are so intermingled and intertwined with those of the FBI and various local and state police departments that it literally functions as a governmental actor that has been held liable for violating a person's constitutionality or constitutionally protected rights. NOI members believe the ADL paid an agent to infiltrate the ranks of the Nation of Islam and then planted false evidence that resulted in the arrest of dozens of its members. Now, this might sound conspiratorial to you, but I don't know if you know this. The ADL has a history of spying on civil rights organizations, on Black organizations. They have a history of this. In fact, the ADL, it's a fact, you can look it up, spied on the beloved Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You might say, why would the ADL be spying on Dr. King? For what reason? What about his message had to do with their message? I mean, it's always told to us that the Jewish involvement and presence in the civil rights movement was one of support. So why was the Anti-Defamation League spying on one of the greatest leaders of the civil rights movement? And in my opinion, when you look at a number of organizations throughout the civil rights struggle where the high officials were of that religious group, where many of the people who were on the ground were of that religious group, you have to ask the question, is this a way to try to uplift our people, or is this a means of surveillance? That seems like that's the role that they have played throughout our community, throughout our organizations. If you want to know why our organizations are watered down, it's for the agenda of surveilling our activity and knowing what it is that we're calling for, what it is that we're pushing for and doing. So it goes on to say that the complaint goes on to say that he honors, respects, and even admires many members of the Jewish community, including his boyhood idol and one of the greatest violinists, Joshua Havitz, who is a Russian Jew and his own Jewish violin teacher. He also mentioned a public appearance he made at the Los Angeles Forum in 1985, where protesters affiliated with a branch of the ADL called for his death. They allegedly stood outside the entrance of the building chanting, "Who do you want? Farakhan. How do you want him dead?" While Farakhan boasts some admiration for Jewish people, he claims there is a fundamental opposition against his theological viewpoint, which is founded on the belief that Black people are the real children of Israel. In the suit, he states, I am declaring to the world that you, the Black people of America and the Western Hemisphere, are the lost, the rejected, the despised, the prodigal son, the lost sheep, God's people. You are the people of God. Now, this is a problem of anti-Semitism. This is a problem of theological viewpoint. So the best thing you can do is tell the people, I'm a hater, I'm a bigot, I'm an anti-Semite. I just challenge the Jewish scholars. Show me the history of your suffering in Egypt for 400 years. I know you can't show it to me. That's all I'm saying. It's not violence. It's not anti-Semitism. It's a theological argument. Now, I said last week, the question is, what purpose is Minister Farakhan doing this lawsuit for? Because in all likelihood, the lawsuit's not going to succeed legally. But I thought, and it looks like I'm correct, the purpose was more so establishing a record as far as what has happened in the name of anti-Semitism. But also, let's get down to the question. Who are the real children of Yasharel? Who are these people the Bible speaks of? Who are these people who came from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Where did they come from? Did they come from Europe? Did they come from Turkey, like we're told? Or did they come from Haran? Did they come from Ur? Did they come from Babylon? Did they come from there? Or did they come from somewhere else completely different? And it's a powerful thing that he's doing if you think about it, because he's putting it on record. Show us how you know that you are those people, and we can show you how we know. And the Nation of Islam, of course, has a number of researchers that work with them, that has written numerous books on this issue and many other issues. So I'm very interested to see how this discussion goes. Now, I'm sure that is going to be the aim of the ADL, is to completely ignore the suit. As I'll read, they're downplaying the suit already. And if they can, not have to answer any of the questions as being asked of them by Minister Farakhan and the Nation of Islam. So it says, other black people the suit claims the ADL has labeled as anti-Semites include Andrew Young, who, Andrew Young's, the Reverend Jackson, Kwame Ture, Nelson Mandela, Mark Lamont Hill, and Dave Chappelle. As for the ADL's response, the organization's director, Jonathan Greenblatt, a defendant named in the complaint, told the New York Post that the suit has no merit, meaning they're going to try to just get this dismissed without giving any answer for anything. Louis Farrakhan is an anti-Semite. One need look no further than his own words and statements to come away with that conclusion, said Greenblatt. Now, Greenblatt, if you haven't seen, he's been all over the Breakfast Club and a number of other platforms with our people. Again, what role? I'd say surveillance is one of the main roles that the ADL has played, as well as trying to change the narrative and control the narrative. That's the main role they have played when they are amongst our people. And so he's been doing that very well, like the ADL does. So this is getting more interesting. I'm definitely going to be paying attention to this lawsuit. We'll definitely talk about it more, y'all willing, because I think some things need to be said out in the public for us to discuss, for us to draw conclusions based on evidence and not based on a narrative that has been force-fed to us since we were children. Most of us have difficulty, those of us who have difficulty with this truth, the difficulty is because you've been told since you were very young that this people are who the Bible is talking about, and that the Bible is written this way, and these people were the ones who did it, and these are the people who are chosen. This is what we've been force-fed since we were very young, and it's difficult for you because of that to be able to consider an alternative. It's the same thing, and I'm not on any side of this as of today. You know, I'm still doing my own research, but it's the same thing when it comes to the flat earth versus round earth. A lot of people, the only reason they could never conceive there being a flat earth is because since you've been young, you've been shown a round earth. And it's to a point where it goes against your very reality, your very being, to consider an alternative. And that's for that reason I'm on neither side, because I've not yet come to an evidence that shows me one side or the other. And number two, I know that all because I've been showed something because I'm young doesn't mean that it's true. So we have to have that same understanding whenever we're dealing with things like who are Yah's chosen people who were actually in the Bible. Have they established that they are the people, or is there an alternative narrative that's being downplayed in order to elevate one faction as though they are the people who they say they are? So these are all questions that I think will be answered from Minister Farakhan's lawsuit. But with that, let's go to the next story. So the British monarchy is doing their normal rounds as far as going to a number of African leaders who are willing to host them still, despite the fact of the crimes of the British government against our people. And so King Charles was recently inside of Kenya for a state visit. It said the King and Queen Camilla touched down at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport late on Monday. The royal couple was received by Kenya's Prime Cabinet Secretary and Foreign Minister Musalia Mudavadi and British High Commissioner to Kenya, Neil Wigan. On Tuesday morning, a ceremonial welcome by President William Ruto is planned at the State House. During the visit, Charles will acknowledge the painful aspects of his nation's shared history with Kenya, which celebrates the 60th anniversary of its independence from the United Kingdom this year. The two countries have enjoyed a close relationship since independence, despite the prolonged struggle against colonial rule, sometimes known as the Mau Mau Rebellion, in which thousands of Kenyans died. Colonial authorities resorted to executions and detention without trials. They tried to put down an insurrection, and thousands of Kenyans said they were beaten and sexually assaulted by agents of the administration. The British High Commission and Charles would meet veterans and give his blessing to efforts by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission to ensure Kenyans and Africans who supported British efforts in the world wars are properly commemorated. We have the gist of what's happening, what has always happened when it comes to colonialism, our relationship to our oppressors. You would never see Nazis being welcomed into a country like the United States or Israel so that they can say, oh, we give our blessing for you to look at the war crimes, and we are happy that we're still together, we're happy that we still have a relationship. Yeah, this is the story throughout the African experience. Consistently, we see that the people who oppressed us are now going to state visits with the politicians that we think we elected, and they're getting to have pageantry and getting to walk around and wave to the people and remember the glory days of their throne being obeyed and adhered to inside of these countries. This should be very clear in our minds. We do not have a healthy relationship with our history. We do not have a real understanding of what happened to our people. We don't understand what happened inside of the rebellions of the Land and Freedom Party. We don't have a real understanding of what we've suffered, because if we actually had that understanding, we would not be welcoming in the people who not only did these things in the past, but continues to do it in the present. It might look different. It might sound different. It might not include the same guns and the same forced rapes or the same types of violence that were done, but these people are still raiding us. These people are still depriving us. They're still controlling our lands. Let that sink in. Why apologize for something that you still benefit from and you continue to do? Why say that you are so saddened by the history that you benefit from? Why not, if you're so saddened, return the relics of colonialism that you so highly prize? So the truth is, these people are not sad. The people actually have a lot of pride in what they did to us. They celebrate it. They're happy they did it. And deep down, they understand that they were on an assignment. The assignment was to control us. And it's only us who get confused about our relationship to these people and think that they were here for our good, think that they improved our lives, think that they mean something to us in the real and present time. They understand what their assignment was. Unfortunately, still for many of our people who look at a British crown as if it is a part of their legacy, a positive part of their legacy, unfortunately, they have been so brainwashed to the point where they are self-hating in order to elevate European dominance over the African continent. So with that, let's get started with the next story. Okay, so this last section, we're going to go through a number of different articles. I want to talk about Haiti. Obviously, we've talked about the impending invasion. Kenya is set to invade Haiti. Have not gotten an update as far as the time that they're planning to do this, but we know that it's coming as far as what the United States is concerned, right? And it's important for us to not forget that there's a problem that is being created in order to create a narrative. A lot of people can't see that because they believe the newspapers too much. They believe what they're being told in the news. So when they say there's a gang problem in Haiti, and it just so happens that the United States has always wanted to go back into Haiti, but now they have a reason. But, we're going to ignore the fact that the United States has been trying to control this country, been manipulating its politics, been depriving the people of their natural rights. We're going to ignore all that, and we're going to just focus on this gang issue that the United States just happens to keep talking about and lamenting and talking about kidnappings. How interesting is it that just the moment when the U.S. was set to go with an invasion of Haiti, all of a sudden, kidnappings of Americans were just rampant. And then you had American missionaries that were showing up in your newsfeed, and their babies were being put on public display, and these people were kidnapped. Oh, wow, how beneficial of the narrative of the United States. So these things are being done, and it's hard for us to understand. They're being done by the same state, the deep state that we're all looking at as being the imperialist entity that has always tried to control Haiti. So to be clearer, let me be very clear. My belief is strongly that these gangs are being controlled by counterintelligence agencies inside of the United States government. We're going to go through some articles where I think you will kind of understand more that this is the case. So let's just first start off with, we're going to start off with the fact that there was an arrest made for the assassination of Jovenel Moïse, the Prime Minister of Haiti. And I think we have to remind ourselves what happened. Moïse was I forget if he was Prime Minister or President. I believe he was actually President of Haiti, not Prime Minister. He had a Prime Minister who's not a President of Haiti. But Moïse was a U.S. puppet. He was put into place by the Haitian government. After his constitutional term expired, the United States supported him staying in power despite the protests of Haitian people who wanted a new president. The United States supported him staying in power. After he was no longer of utility to the United States because the protests were just getting out of hand, mysteriously, Jovenel Moïse is assassinated. And the people who assassinated him, they said in the night that they were part of the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA. They said that on loudspeakers, and everyone can see the video from when that assassination happened. So this is what happened. We can't forget that history whenever we hear about the president. So this week, 2 of 11 people charged in Miami, the United States, with plotting or supporting the president's killing. Former Colombian soldiers Mario Antonio Palacios and the squad leader German Alejandro Rivera Garcia, aka Colonial Mike, will appear separately in federal court. Palacios' attorneys are trying to get a confession that their client made to the FBI agents about the plot thrown out. Rivera, who was part of the convoy that went to Moise's residence, pled guilty last month to conspiracy to supporting a plot to kill Moise. The plea was entered after he too was transferred from a Haitian prison. He faces up to life in prison at his sentencing Friday. Even before his arrest, Badio was cited by several jailed suspects as playing a central role in the coordination of the plot. Badio, who worked in the police anti-corruption unit before being fired 2 months before the assassination, has long been seen as either key person behind the scenes of or a potential mastermind. Accusations he has rejected in voice recordings while on the run. While many are hoping his arrest will provide an investigative breakthrough, there is fear that someone will kill him to silence him if he stays in Haiti too long. It goes on to say, on Sunday, police arrested 5 people who went to visit the house in Fort Jacques where Badio resided. They included Andre Jr. Chadricier, who described himself as a journalist, but a source told the Herald is a close confidant of the former governmental official, and 3 lawyers. The lawyer's arrest was confirmed by the head of the bar in the city. Speaking on local radio, Lubin said the lawyers were at the client's residence to collect personal belongings. So this story just came out. This man, who they're saying was basically in plain sight, he was just arrested for the assassination of Jovenel Moïse. We're going to talk about the Colombian aspect of the assassination, okay? So, Colombian ex-army officer gets life in prison for killing of Haiti's president, Jovenel Moïse. It says a retired Colombian army officer has been sentenced to life in prison for his role in the 2021 assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse, which caused unprecedented turmoil in the Caribbean nation. This is the one we just talked about, German Alejandro Rivera Garcia. He's the second of 11 suspects detained and charged in Miami to be sentenced in what the prosecutors have described as a conspiracy hatched in both Haiti and Florida to hire mercenaries to kidnap or kill Moïse, who was slain at his private home near the Haitian capital of Port-au-Prince on July 7th, 2021. Rivera, as we said, Colonial Mike, had pled guilty in September to conspiring and supporting a plot to kill the president. According to court documents, he was part of a convoy headed to Moise's residence the day of the killing. He had faced up to life imprisonment and hoped to receive a lighter sentence after signing a cooperation agreement with U.S. authorities. So let's emphasize this. He had pled guilty, something that most people probably would not do when it talks about assassinating a president in a foreign country. He had pled guilty to life imprisonment, but he hopes to receive a lighter sentence after he signed a cooperation agreement with U.S. authorities. Now, it says federal judge Jose Martinez handed down the sentence to a less than 30-minute hearing of Miami on Friday. It came after the Haitian-Chilean businessman Rodolphe Jarre was sentenced to life in prison for his role in Moise's killing. The former Haitian Senator John Joseph is also will be sentenced in December. According to the charges, Rivera, Jarre, and Joseph and others, including 20 Colombian citizens and several dual Haitian-American citizens, participated in the plot. The conspirators initially planned to kidnap the Haitian president and later changed the plan to kill him. Investigators allege the plotters had hoped to win contracts under the successor to Moïse. Meanwhile, more than 40 suspects in the case remain in prison in Haiti more than 2 years after the assassination. At the newest investigative judge continues his interrogations among those arrested in the killing are 18 other Colombian soldiers. As we see, the press has really changed its tone about this assassination. They're trying to make it seem like this is something that was really done by Colombians and the United States had nothing to do with it. And having these people come out and say that they're going to collaborate with the state in order to find actual people involved, I'm sure they're going to get the exact narrative that they want. That is that this was done so that Colombians can get contracts with the president. It has nothing to do with the United States, right? But the history doesn't add up to these new arrests or these new the new compliance happening. It doesn't add up when you look at the totality of the circumstances as far as what happened to Jovenel Moise. So I want us to revisit the Haitian assassination and how the United States government was involved. So we're going to go through this article. It says, a lawyer for the Colombian soldiers told Univision that the former Colombian soldiers acted under the belief that the plot was sanctioned by the U.S. government and were tricked by CTU. They were absolutely convinced that they were working for part of the U.S. government. I don't know if it was the FBI or the CIA or the DEA, said the attorney, who represents several of the detained men. They were told that they had to detain a very important person and that the 22 Colombians had to accompany them, she added. The soldiers were recruited in Miami by CTU Federal Academy and flew to Haiti on tickets purchased by the company. Intriago traveled from Miami to meet them and received regular briefings by Pretel via Zoom. The soldiers flew to Haiti on a ticket purchased by CTU Federal Academy. Intriago traveled from Miami to meet them and they received regular briefings by Pretel, according to two sources who spoke to Univision. CTU's initial plan was to aid regime change, not assassination, according to court documents, but something changed between April and July. The night before the operations, all participants were informed that the mission was to kill the president, according to federal prosecutors in Miami. On the night of the assassination, one of the men in a convoy that arrived at Moise's residence shouted through a megaphone that it was DEA operation, something the United States has strongly denied. There is literal video of the assassination. You could hear people saying that they're DEA. So the fact that the United States is denying this to let you know that the United States has something to do with something. Supposedly the plan was to install a new government and the Colombians were to be integrated as the president's new security team. But within hours, all the Colombians were arrested and the other conspirators, some Haitian politicians and a Supreme Court magistrate among them, disappeared. So this lets you know right here that the United States was involved. People are saying we really thought we were working with the FBI, the CIA, or the DEA. They were working with some part of the government. They weren't sure about what the mission was. They thought they were going to kidnap the president. Then last minute, the agenda just changed and said, kill the president. Well, it wouldn't make sense for that to be the mandate if their only goal was to have an end with the next administration. Suddenly, they are told by someone high up to kill the president. But more happens with this, obviously, because what happens is that the United States gets its cover. They were able to cover up their involvement by using the Colombians. It's said that they specifically wanted them to carry out this assassination. They could have found someone in Haiti, but they particularly found Colombians in order to cover their tracks because they did not want to have links to being involved with this assassination. So we could see how the United States wanted to cover it up, wanted to present it to the world as if they had nothing to do with it. But let's talk about how this goes back into the whole idea of Haiti having a gang problem, of the gang problem being something that the United States has nothing to do with. This is just because the president was assassinated, and so we need to go into Haiti. Now, a news story came out that there were charges against a Haitian gang leader. He was accused of kidnapping and murder, okay? U.S. authorities upped the ante Tuesday against a gang leader who is considered one of the most dangerous criminals in Haiti, charging him anew with the kidnapping of a Haitian-American couple. Vietnam Innocent, who heads the Crazy Barre gang, was indicted on similar federal charges last year. He's accused of ordering the kidnapping of Haitian-American Jean Franklin and Marie Odette Franklin from their home in Haiti on October 7, 2022. The wife was shot and killed and the husband held in captivity until his family paid a ransom for his relief 21 days later. Innocent, who was 37, was charged alone with conspiracy, kidnapping, and faces up to life in prison or the death penalty. But he's at large in Haiti. The U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves at a news conference in Washington, D.C. that said that Innocent's gang and others in Haiti are increasingly targeting Haitian Americans as they terrorize the island nation in political turmoil in wake of the assassination of Haitian president more than 2 years ago. Innocent and Crazy Barrier gang operate at the outs of the Department of Haiti that includes Delmas. So here's where it gets interesting. The U.S. Embassy area is surrounded. Where the U.S. Embassy is, it's surrounded by 3 powerful gangs, 2 of which are controlled by leaders implicated in the kidnapping of 16 American missionaries in 2021. The gangs are 400 Mowozo, Crazy Barre, who have been escalating their violence, raiding businesses and homes. Crazy Barrier gang, which is behind the latest upsurge in violence, is led by the politically connected Innocent. Despite having a $1 million FBI reward for his capture for the missionaries' kidnappings, he has been carrying out a wave of brutal attacks. The developing U.S. crackdown and reward reflect the increasing attention the Biden administration has been paying lately to Haiti's lawlessness. So let's just be clear. This Innocent guy, he has a gang who is stationed really at the U.S. Embassy or around the U.S. Embassy. He's been at large since over a year of terrorizing people, of kidnapping Americans. He's on the FBI's wanted list, a $1 million bounty on his head. Yet he's been able to do these things without being caught. At the same time, he's been giving the United States the narrative they need. They need to go to the American people and convince them that a invasion of Haiti is what needs to happen. And the way that they've been able to really get people behind it is saying that there's been Americans who've been kidnapped. So if you understand the correlation, this guy, his gang, very close to the U.S. Embassy, creating the narrative that the United States wants. Kidnapping people, kidnapping Americans on the FBI wanted list, $1 million bounty on his head, but still has been able to, for over years at this point, commit these acts of violence against people targeting Americans. Can you see the correlation as far as the U.S. involvement with this narrative? But just to drive the point home, we're going back to Jovenel Moise's assassination because I want you to remember the guy's name. His name was Innocent, right? His last name. So it says, authorities in Haiti have identified new suspects. This is from March 10th of 2023. They've identified new suspects in the July 2021 killing of President Jovenel Moise, including a pastor and a well-known gang leader. I wonder what gang leader they're talking about. Well, Desrosiers identified the gang leader as Vital Home Innocent, leader of the Crazy Barre gang, which roughly translates to breaking barriers. He is sought by the FBI, which accused him of helping kidnap 17 U.S. missionaries in October 2021. Desrosiers did not provide further details. He did not immediately return a message for comment, which is interesting that they have this guy's number who's on the FBI wanted list, and they called him up for comment, and he didn't return their message. Before the new arrests were announced, more than 40 suspects have been detained in the case, including at least 18 Colombian ex-soldiers accused of raiding Moise's private residence in an attack that injured his wife. Another 11 suspects are in U.S. custody, including a Haitian senator and other key players. So what's the point of this? This same gang leader who is doing what the United States needs them to do, creating a narrative. There's mass kidnappings happening of Americans, terrorism, gangs are terrorizing, they're kidnapping Americans. His gang, which so happens to be so close to the U.S. Embassy, yet he hasn't been caught, and apparently you can reach this guy by phone, according to the newspapers. His gang has not been caught. He has not been caught. This is the same person who has involvement with the assassination of Jovenel Moise, an assassination that we know the United States government was involved in. So when I tell you that these gang problems are not organic, this is not the people of Haiti necessarily, but these are counterintelligence agencies that are doing things in order to get the result they want. That is a narrative that the world can get behind. Understand, this is not just in Haiti. This is in your neighborhood, possibly, depending on where you live. This could be in your nation, wherever you are. Things that are created by an international system that wants to achieve an agenda, things that are being done to look a certain way, even though it's not at all what it truly is. Well, these things are happening all the time. And unfortunately, if you get your news and understanding of the world from the mainstream, you're going to be deceived, because these people are professional liars, and they get their directives, they get their information, they get their exclusive from the liars. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. I thank you all for watching. Y'all willing, I will be back with the next video.
Marcus Mosiah Garvey once said, "The prejudice of the white folks of the United States of America is not so much because they hate your color. It is because they hate your condition, and it is because they are human beings why they hate. Although they have not said as much to you, that is how they feel over the question. That is the bone of contention, not because you are black, but because they believe that they are entitled to all the benefits that America can give, because they built up America to suit themselves, and whatsoever we have done to build up America, we did it as slaves. And they haven't used us as slaves. They are not responsible for our condition." This is the white guilt complex.
I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
And ask Minister Farakhan to respond. Whom didn't we... Yes.
I would just like to say that I am terrified that even you, someone who's obviously educated, has given up hope completely. Like when you call upon us, you say white folk, you say black people, Jewish people. Why can't we come together? We obviously can come together. We just have to. We just have to find a way to do it.
The desire is good, but the reality is the total opposite of your desire. And unfortunately, as a young lady, you are not in the position of power to make the decisions to make America work. May I, as an audience of intelligent people, I would like to just take a moment to say to you that I really don't think you fully understand what has happened to these people that you look at as second class or inferior citizens in this nation. Black people who were brought to this country were stripped of their names, language, culture, religion, God, and taken totally away from the history of themselves. Here are 30 million people who don't wear their own names, they wear your names. Who don't speak their own language, they speak English, which is not their language. They never were allowed their own cultural expression of Africa. Don't you realize that when you turn a people upside down and inside out, then sell them not for a day, not for a year, but for 300 years, and deny us the human right to know, to read a book, to learn, to understand. And then after 300 years of that, you allow us into the church, but by that time you've painted Jesus white, God white, the angels white, and then all these black people have been subjected to a form of white supremacy, which produces in the reverse a black inferiority. And this is fulfilling what Jesus said, as a man thinketh, so is he. And as long as our people think the way they think, we will never be able to do what we as a people should do to correct our condition.
Over here.
Excuse me, I was brought up in, quote, Bedford-Stuyvesant in my time. But I would like to say what scares us is I think we hear violence.
The young lady said she's afraid of violence. And isn't it sad that we who have been the victims years of so much violence. Now whites fear violence from us. We do not have a history of killing white people. White people have a history of killing us. See? And what you fear, may I say this, sir? What you fear, and it's a deep guilt thing that white folks suffer. You are afraid that if we ever come to power, we will do to you and your fathers what you and your people have done to us. And I think you are judging us by the state of your own mind, and that is not necessarily the mind of black people.